Hello, Patriots. Welcome again to the channel. I want to start off by issuing a big thank you to everybody. We now have one video with more than 36,000 views. Just goes to prove what I've been saying all along, that there is a huge chunk of Kentuckians that are not buying what Andy Beshear is selling. And they're not going to stand here and just take all the propaganda. And we're glad that you're tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing thousands and thousands of more Kentuckians get the news without all this propaganda spin. But let's talk about the news and what Governor Beshear was pushing out today at his press conference. One of the things he mentioned today is he is going to now be providing 100% health care for black Kentuckians. Well, I find this very interesting. Why didn't he say he was going to be providing any health care at all for Hispanic Kentuckians? He didn't talk about them, didn't even refer to them. What about Asian Kentuckians? Didn't talk about them either. What about Eastern Kentuckians? This is an area that is traditionally, predominantly a white area. We had a hospital over in Ashland, Kentucky that closed earlier this year, and those people don't have access to care now in their town. He was talking about having more health care facilities right there in Louisville, and he wanted to make it in a way where you wouldn't have to change a lot of buses to get to it in a city that already does have multiple hospitals. But over in Eastern Kentucky, such as in Ashland, now they don't have an access to a public bus that's going to take them to the next county to get to the nearest hospital. And here's another question. Where is he getting all the money for all of this health care? Is he going to increase taxes to pay for all of this? Or is he going to take the money from something else that he's no longer going to fund and instead use the money for this? Once again, we see him promising a whole lot of things with no clue whatsoever how he actually intends to pay for all of these things. Something to keep in mind as the months go by. Where is all this money coming from? And if he's going to be providing 100% health coverage for one group, then he's going to have to do it for all of the other groups. Because if you only provide 100% health coverage for one particular group, and you don't do it for everybody else, do you know what that is, Mr. Governor? That's racism. Racism is bad. Isn't that what we've all been talking about now? We want to push back against this. So one of his promises that he's making just out of thin air, and we'll see how all that turns out in the months and years to come. Let's talk about something else he mentioned at the press conference. There was a report this past weekend that the Clays Mill Church near to Lexington over in neighboring Jessamine County now has 17 cases of the virus, and they called that a hotbed. Well, let's think about this first of all. I've been over to this church. This is an exceptionally large church. And it came out of Lexington, is now bordering Lexington. I wonder how many of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of members of this church, I would guess well over 1,000, how many of these people didn't get the virus from anywhere else in the city where they've been over the last 2.5 weeks since they started meeting again? I think it's actually 3 weeks since they've been meeting. He didn't say, well, hey, these 17 people from this area, they might have got it from Walmart, or they might have got it from Kroger, or they might have got it from any place else that they've been in the second largest city in the state. No, he specifically says, and the leftist media is also pushing the idea, oh, they got it from the church. We once again see the church being singled out for something that you cannot say the church is where they got this at all. I double dog dare. That's something I used to do back when I was a kid. I double dog dare Governor Beshear or anyone in the media to prove that anybody who has the virus got it from one location and they didn't get it from all the other locations that they've been at in the last 2-3 week period before the virus finally showed up in them. You know why? Can't be done. So they're pushing this propaganda, the impression that you're just getting it from the church, which is not provable at all. In fact, you spend far more time other places and an incredibly little amount of time at the church. It is highly unlikely that that is where they got that from. More propaganda being pushed out by the liberal media and Governor Beshear. Let's talk about some of the other things that he's doing. There was a big protest this past Friday, and Governor Beshear says there was an estimated 1,500 people there. Well, I want you to notice that's the number that he said in his own press conference, but if you were to watch TV or read the newspapers here in Kentucky, they will say, and I will quote their headline, thousands of protesters. There wasn't thousands. It was less than 2,000. It was 1,500 according to his own numbers. And this event, interestingly enough, was done on the back part of the Capitol in an area that was blocked off for those who were going to protest against Governor Beshear. We weren't allowed to go to this area. But it's okay for those who are supporting Governor Beshear. So we're seeing there a double standard. He literally positioned snipers on the roof of the Capitol during the protest against him. We didn't see anything like that in the protest that was for him. And we had 1,700 people show up at the Kentucky Freedom Rally on May the 2nd. And he said that we were selfish and we were spreading the virus. Well, what about the 1,500 people that were at his event? We're going to show you some of the pictures of it here right now. Do you see any social distancing going on here? No, there's no social distancing. Half the people don't have masks. A lot of the people are touching. What hypocrisy to say, hey, if you have church, you have to social distance, and you're supposed to wear a mask when you're out somewhere, and definitely don't get next to each other and touch. And we see it's exactly what he's breaking his own rules. And he mentioned in his press conference that, oh, this was an event, but it was a young people. It was so nice to see 1,500 young people. Well, that's not true either. I'm sure there were young people there, but it wasn't necessarily a young people event. Here, look at this other picture. You'll see there's Governor Beshear, and he's holding hands with this older person, an adult, not a youth, and who's all the people in the background? They're all adults, and you'll see Governor Beshear, he's not social distancing. He is touching. He's got a mask on, but it's down underneath of his chin, doing no good at all, and the other person doesn't have a mask whatsoever, and he is breaking all of these rules that he's saying that your place of business has to comply with, and you can't have 25 people in your backyard for a barbecue on the weekend, but he can have a literal 1,500 people in his backyard for an event that he goes to speak at that is supportive of what he is saying. So we see a great level of hypocrisy. All level of credibility he had was just lost because of his actions during that event. No social distancing, half of them without mask, touching people, pulling his mask down, and he's all okay with all of that, but he tells us that we're not allowed to do that. And again, that's why he's famous for saying, you can't be doing that. He's not famous for saying that he can't be doing that. Well, let's hit one other issue, and that is the issue of the virus. He reported today during his press conference that yesterday on Sunday there was a grand total of one person in the entire state of Kentucky that supposedly died of the virus. One person out of a state of nearly 4.5 million people. But was this an isolated incident? Well, he also reported on how many people died today. On Monday, there was a grand total of one person in a state of, again, nearly 4.5 million people. That does not constitute an emergency. Yet he is continuing to exercise the emergency powers clause, granting him all of this power. One person a day does not constitute, and it does not justify an emergency. It does not justify keeping everything else locked down. For telling people they can't do youth sports when you can have all kinds of events without masks, and you can't have people in restaurants more than 50 or 33% when you're with a group that's far larger than that. We see it's completely breaking all of his own rules, and it does not justify his continued emergency powers. And there's one last thing. I'll throw this in as a bonus, and I won't even charge you for it. He was asked by one of the reporters today at the end of his press conference, what about this report from the World Health Organization that says that asymptomatic people, that it is very hard for them to spread the virus? I will actually link that article, and you can watch the video yourself. It linked in the description. That World Health Organization doesn't say, well, it's unlikely that asymptomatic people will spread it. They didn't say it was hard for them to do it. They said it was very hard for asymptomatic people to spread the virus. There are no doubt, despite what Governor Beshear may try to give you the impression, the vast majority of Kentuckians don't have the virus. And even those who do have it and are asymptomatic, the report is now it is very hard for them to actually spread it. This is very different information and very backwards from the impression that he is continuing to push to justify the lockdown of Kentucky's economy, to justify keeping so many things closed, and to try to justify his ongoing emergency powers. Well, I hope you got a little armed up with some ammunition on the information front on what's really going on, pointing out how he's breaking his own rules. And that I hope that we'll look forward to seeing tens of thousands of more Kentuckians tune in, stand up, speak out, and push back. Until next time, I'm Lee Watts for Patriot Point. Stand strong, Kentucky.